Welcome into our latest Hear Me, See Me podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. Hear Me, See Me is a project of WIBW TV raising awareness of mental health and mental illness and the issues surrounding it. As we've been going through our efforts, we have been really amplifying voices of people who are living with mental illness, who are impacted by mental illness, and who offer hope and support for others. And hope is what we are talking about with our guest today. Rachel Holthaus is affectionately known as the Hope Dealer all around the capital city and surrounding area because of her own experiences in life. Welcome to you, Rachel.
Thank you very much.
And this is going to be a tough discussion as you share your story. And so as we launch into this, we do want people to know that if you see yourself in any of this, if you feel that you are in crisis, if you need to reach out, remember the 988 crisis line. They are there for you 24/7 for you or someone you love. And take us back to the journey to become the Hope Dealer, because there wasn't always this smile on your face. You weren't always so positive. So if you had to go back to yourself maybe, 15, 20 years ago, what was that Rachel like?
That Rachel was kind of like this Rachel. And so I very much give an abridged version almost daily when I talk to people, because there is more happy than sad in my story. And so I try to focus on, we need to talk about what happened, but what I'm doing now and the things I do every day to keep all of that stuff at bay is where I want the focus. But I describe what happened because I want that to resonate with someone that's listening. Mm-hmm. So in my history as a person, it's easier to look back now and understand it better. And that probably a little bit just comes with age anyway, as we look back at our life. But I was a people pleaser to an extreme, because I would just nod and smile and not disagree almost with anyone. And what that does to people is harm them on the inside when we don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or we don't want to, rock the boat. And so we go along, and sometimes you can just convince yourself that that is the way I feel, and I buy into XYZ, whatever it is. I tell people, if you see that in yourself, take a shortcut and just skip to the good part and tell the truth. Mm-hmm. Be authentic with people. Even if it hurts feelings, and because that is truly underneath what happened. I wouldn't really say how I was feeling about something. And I lost my grandmother. She was just a person, she wasn't a perfect person, but she was my person. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of describe her as the buffer in my life. I think we all have special people that kind of help navigate us through things. And although she was sick, and I just wasn't prepared to not have that voice to bounce things off of like I normally did. And so sinking back into that, keeping my feelings to myself, but then there was no outlet. Mm-hmm. And I began taking sleeping pills. I have a nursing degree and a master's in healthcare leadership. And I began taking them with the intention, I was working so much and going through this toward the end of her life, and started taking that to thinking it was going to help me cope better, I'd be sleeping better, I could kind of get on with things. No. Now, again, this is 20 years ago, and so they don't, they're better now, I think, about explaining the risks of drugs mm-hmm. to physicians when they prescribe things. Before, back then, they would just always, it's non-habit forming, and so it just wasn't any big deal to write for sleeping pills and things like that with lots of refills. We don't do things that way anymore because we've learned. Mm-hmm. And so with Ambien, it's a drug that's not used very often anymore, because there have been all these stories of people eating in the middle of the night, driving and not realizing it.
Like sleepwalking, right?
Yes.
You don't realize what's happening.
Yes. And so I was one of those stories. I was taking it and kind of hiding it from people, and I wasn't taking it to go to sleep. I was taking it for the feeling of checking out.
As you were a nurse, you were a healthcare professional, mm-hmm. now you would tell yourself, you should have known better, Rachel, but
I
did
did.
you?
I did know better.
You did know better.
I did know
so
better.
So you knew these risks, and you could see what was happening in yourself.
Almost immediately. So it was really the first time a chemical like that was on my brain, because I wasn't a drinker. I had never even seen marijuana at that point in my life or anything. And so ingesting this substance in my late 20s was just different to me. And I knew that I was keeping that to myself. I like how this feels. It was never, in any time that I've had trouble with things, it was never addiction to the substance. It was me trying to escape my own feelings and not dealing with things I needed to deal with. I didn't have terrible things happening in my life. I just didn't have appropriate coping. Mm-hmm. And so I have appropriate coping now, and that's what I talk about. So if you recognize any of these types of things, you're not handling it right. And we know that in the study of addiction and all those things. When you ingest a substance, think about the intention that you're taking it. Even, a glass of wine on a Friday night. Are you taking it to relax, unwind in an open setting with friends, close it up, go home, go to bed? Or are you hiding that, from people? Are you hiding the volume that you're taking in? It wasn't alcohol that was a problem for me, but it's the same. Anything like that is mind and mood altering. And so I knew the difference between taking it to go to sleep for a very short period of time and taking it because of the feeling of checking out.
Get through your daily life. How did it escalate from there?
It escalated into layers of compromising my moral and professional ethics, and it was very short-lived, but I did give myself leftover fentanyl that was to be wasted after medicating a patient for pain. And so that is not something that's talked about a lot, but there are professional organizations for doctors and nurses and CRNAs and anesthesiologists, because these things do happen. We don't talk about it a lot. And so I have gotten to speak to the DNP students at Washburn. I'm very proud of that, because after all of that, I was lovingly helped through those problems professionally by the people I worked with. They knew it was very out of character for me. I'm a person who believes in rules and all those things. It was just very out of character. And so they helped me. And once that was taking place, then I immediately was hired at a quality improvement organization. And I look back at the things that I learned doing that job. I've loved every job I've ever had since I was a kid. I worked in the pharmacy when I was 14 at Kmart. It's attitude when we go to anything and how we accept and enjoy the things and make the best of it, I think. So here I am, displaced from being a bedside nurse, and I loved that so very much. I worked in an office setting, but I grew in that very, very quickly because I could use my experience as a operating room and recovery room nurse and apply that to things that they were trying to do, work with hospitals. I worked for Medicare, and we worked with individual hospitals across the state on preventing harm. So a patient's never to fall in the hospital. They're never to get a hospital-acquired infection, all those types of things. So I had a lot of experience with that, and I was able to apply it differently. So this big, bubbly personality that had been having trouble and was sad and then covering things, I started to emerge again. And so I really delved into that quality improvement piece. I did well at that job. I traveled all across Kansas often, and then several times a year went to the headquarters at Medicare and shared with other states that were doing the same type of work. And
But there's another turn here, because that wasn't it. What happened to bring sad Rachel back?
so everything was going along fine, really fine. I got another baby, and which was part of the layers in there. Trying to tell this quickly is difficult sometimes, but the layers in there.
Yeah.
I'd had a lot of problems with endometriosis. I'd had 5 surgeries, and I did have the first baby, but it was another 6 years before I got pregnant again. This all happened though during that quality improvement working time, and so those were happy things. I also obtained my master's in healthcare leadership, and that was all going so well. And there was a private event in our family, and I just say it like that to protect underaged people that I love. And so it is an event though that you know, anything I'd been through before, I thought, oh, you know, I've been through something tough. It can always get worse when we go through things and we have trouble coping. So it got worse because it was an event that destroyed all of the relationship in our family, and we hadn't sat down at a table together in 13 years. And what I tell people about things like that is, I think a good thing to do is focus on your little core immediate family, because we're always going to have outside factors. And if you're a person that has trouble coping, or things in the world that break your heart every day. A friend of mine said that one time, and I thought it was just a perfect way to explain it, especially to an emotional, sensitive person. You can pick up on things and then just fester about it. The things we can't control, we have to let go. And so it was something I couldn't fix in our family, and it broke my heart, and I just didn't. I believed in God always, and I loved my children enough to straighten up and figure things out, but I just couldn't get there. I couldn't get there. And so I attempted to end my life in a very big way. I never mentioned to anyone that I was struggling with those thoughts, so it's another reason I talk about this every day, because I was a person that had a nice house on the hill, you know, good job, career, family, all that
Outside
stuff.
looking in, it looked great.
But inside, you know, I wasn't okay. But I didn't have a Jelly Roll song back then, you know. we didn't talk about it. We're getting better. We're getting better about talking about it.
And when you talk about it, that's the point you're trying to make. No one can fix what they don't know is broken.
Right.
And no one knew that inside you were broken.
Right.
So you attempted to end your life. It was
the thoughts that I was having were always involved a car. They always involved I'll just drive off this bridge, and I know that will hurt people, but they will be better off than watching me, this bright light in their life, and my candle had gone almost all the way out. That is such a real feeling when people feel that way, even though it's not true, when our thinking is broken, but you convince yourself that people are better off without you. And it is not true. It's not true.
But you survived the accident because you were
did.
talking to me.
I did.
But the injuries were quite severe. And as you were going through recovery, because the accident itself, I mean, and I don't mean to be flippant saying it this way, but it didn't knock sense back into you. There was still a journey that had to happen.
True, because there is not a scientific reason that I walked away from this accident. They called the coroner and the ambulance and flipped a coin, basically. I mean, there was a gaping hole in my neck. A metal pole went through my face and crushed my jaw. So about the lower third of my face was gone. And they couldn't even establish an airway. They were bagging my neck. And so it was there isn't truly a scientific reason that I made it through that. I know there's a reason I made it through that. I couldn't become the Hope Dealer without that.
Right.
I couldn't be here for my kids. I know there's a significant reason. But because of those things, I had a head injury. And so then here you wake up on a ventilator and see your family. It took me years to be able to admit that that was intentional.
That the accident was intentional?
Yes. So, again, never a constant everyday thing that I was ingesting substance. But when I took, I was taking muscle relaxers at the time of the wreck because I'd had a back surgery. And again, just any chemical like that on my brain is not okay. You have talked to John Cantrell about, he explains it different ways, but when I listen to him, I listen to anybody that's like me, a misfit as far as those things are concerned. Some people can just go and be in a social setting and do those things, but there's a different type of brain, and mine is one that shouldn't have anything like that. And so with sleeping pills, especially, or sleeping pills and muscle relaxers, my inhibitions were lowered to entertain suicidal thoughts. Again, I told no one. That's the first line of defense, is just speak up, just say something, because obviously you need somebody else to decipher what's going on, not you. And so I wasn't speaking up, but I was having these thoughts. And so that I never said to my family. I had a trach in my neck and a feeding tube for 2 years. I was in a hospital bed. And it's just...
And they're giving you probably more of these substances that are continuing the issue.
It was terrible. Although the part about me being transparent at that point that I had a problem with pills, we all knew that. That was open, and KU worked with us a lot on, I would have a plan and be on Suboxone, which is a medication that's made so that you can't take too much of it and that type of thing. So the immediate times after surgeries, because I went to the operating room, I've been in the operating room 38 times.
Dang.
to get this result that's still crooked, but it works.
But it's a smile, and we love it. We love it.
So we always had a plan, and there was open communication. I'd been to treatments. Had help. I love those environments because people are nice to me. I got voted the mayor of my rehab class in one place,
Congratulations.
Right.
But you still had these things that were going on inside you. So let's fast forward to the rock bottom day that changed everything.
Yeah. So
it was your hero.
It was the greatest day. I just saw him.
The worst day was the best day.
I just saw him the other day. So Officer Josh Clam is who we're talking about, and he was at that time, he's on to a different position in the department, but he was part of the community intervention team. And this is a special branch of the police department that is out in our streets every day trying to help delineate on the cases that need decided if people are breaking the law or it's mental health. They know something is going on with their mental health, whether it's some people it's an outward cry that, they go to a bridge and sit, or they, get close, that they're wanting somebody to see them. I wanted to be seen. I wasn't talking about it, but I would lock myself in like a public restroom. I'm having trouble. By this time, going through all these surgeries, it was so hard on my little family. We were getting a divorce, and because none of this was covered by my insurance, they deemed it cosmetic to put new artificial joints in my jaw. And so that was a lot of stress on a little family. And so anyway, we were getting a divorce, and I wasn't okay. And so that day I had locked myself in a public restroom.
And this wasn't the first time you'd done it? Or was this the first time you locked yourself in the
Yes,
public?
yes,
Okay, so
yes.
this was your, this is what I'm going to do today.
It was, and you can't make sense of it. There is no making sense of things like that, because I was not okay. I wasn't okay. But I think, looking back on it with my nurse brain, for me, it couldn't have been anyone close to me in my circle. It couldn't have been I had all different kind of treatment modalities to try to fix this problem that was going on in my brain. And what worked is Officer Josh Clam kicked in the door of this restroom I was in, and he said, "Rachel, your divorce is final. You are going to make me tell Emma and Molly that you're dead." So here, this uniformed officer, never been in trouble in my life, speeding tickets, but here, this uniformed officer knew my situation intimately enough. That was the moment I felt seen. Because he knew my name, and he knew my kids' names. And I have trouble standing up for myself, but I can stand up for everybody else. And it hurt my feelings that made him sad. To say, "You're going to make me do that." Well, I'm not going to make him do that. I'm going to get better. So that's really how the healing started. And it isn't. Anybody that loves somebody that struggles with these things, it is not that they don't love you enough to fix it. We don't all have the same personalities, and we don't all have the same reaction to substances and chemical imbalances in our brains. And so you cannot look at another person and say, "Well, that's all it would take for me this is all it would have taken for me, and I would have been fine." Just maybe something like you got shocked by a threat, like, "You do this one more time and I'm going to leave you," or
Right.
I'm thinking about different situations for people that love people that have addictions. It just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So for me, it was an outside person, outside of my circle, had never been in trouble before, and he picked me up by the loop of my jeans, and he didn't take me back to Vallejo. Because I was in the reason that I talk so much about I'm no different than Joe at the bus stop, because a lot of people that are displaced and they're unsheltered by choice or whatever, they have a big story too. Every human does. And I'm no different, because I was in that cycle of when we very first were getting divorced, I went to the rescue mission. I took my Bible and my purse, and I wanted all of the asset and things that we had built as a family to stay with my kids and my ex-husband, because I never thought I would make it out of that. So
You were that hopeless.
I was that hopeless.
Like, I don't need anything because I'm not going to be around anyway.
Barry Feeker asked me, he said, "Rachel, did you come to the mission to die?" And I hadn't been asked that before, but absolutely, absolutely. Even though you don't particularly use those words, I never thought I would make it through this. And so anyway, I stayed there, a few days, and I'd go over to the office and pay $40 for my room for the night. And they're like, "What are you doing?" Because I had means, but I knew I shouldn't be alone. But I was done with talking about it. I was done talking in therapy. So the things, when I tell people there's an unlocked door 24 hours a day at the crisis center here at Vallejo, they're not going to talk to you a lot and try to fix you. It's really just someone to sit beside you, offer you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and let people process what's going on. I say all the time, that's really what people need when they're in such a hurt place as I was. I just needed support and not really to be told what to do. And I think at that point, either people figure themselves out or they don't.
And it's not, you mentioned it with addiction, that you can't just tell somebody to stop and it's going to stop, but I think that applies to a lot of other things as well. When you talk about depression or anxiety, a lot of people think, well, why can't you just get over it? You know, I think about when I've talked about how I'm a survivor of violent crime, and I'll talk about how sometimes I still have this fear or anxiety, and people are like, well, I thought you got over that a long time ago. Well, you don't just get over things. And for you, it was finding the person who was going to speak your language. And so to hear from you that it's not something that overnight you snapped out of. It wasn't, it didn't take just one thing. Other people had mentioned your children before, but it wasn't until Sergeant Clam kicked in the door and put it in that way that you realized, oh, wait a minute, I don't want somebody to be telling my kids that. Even though you've been told that before, this was the time it sunk in because you felt seen. How did that lead to the hope dealer aspect? Because when you say it in that way, that's what it is. It's about seeing people.
It is. And
it says it on the graphic back there. See me.
As I look back at intentionally driving my car into a stationary object, a large tree, you know, I can't remember the events, but I know that's what I was always thinking. And so when I think about that, I wanted people to know how bad I was broken. I wanted people to know how bad this event broke me, and in a way that, you know, not blaming other people. When we go through things, I take accountability for my part. Part of my accountability is saying, I was wrong. I was wrong by not just voicing what I was upset about.
And everybody needs to hear that.
Instead,
that was wrong.
Yes.
So if you're feeling this in your head right now, don't keep it inside. Call 988, reach out to a friend or family member, because they will hear you and see you. You don't need to do an act like that.
Exactly, because just doing that would be way different than showing that in my action. So fast forward to every day I get to 6 days a week, I get to pick up these cookies at Crumble Cookie. Well, 5, because one day folks from the mission come. It's our heaviest day on cookies, and they take them to the main kitchen at the mission. And then the other days, it's just kind of a, you know, it depends on the volume, but they are so gracious. For 2 years, they have given us those. And it has been a wonderful tool for me. Because here I am, I have a nursing degree, I have a master's degree, I'm on disability and a single person, and so I have to be careful about my finances and my health insurance and stay within my means, but I have time, I can't lift a lot, cookies don't weigh that much, and I can still love people, and I can still use this master's in leadership. I think how that has manifested is organizing a community effort, trying to make a change in our culture about donations, about, you know, getting things directly to KBC, breaking down the barrier of where do foster parents and foster kids go to get resources in this town. That kind of stuff is what I try to do every day, getting information out there about the blessing boxes. These are mental health interventions for myself. I love that anybody else benefits from getting donations, or other people trying it is really what I'm trying to do. So I say, call me, message me. Anybody can take a shotgun ride in the Hope Mobile and we'll go fill some blessing boxes. And I promise that centering your own gratitude. If I had gone to fill a blessing box and had a conversation with another human being, the conversations that I have every day now, that could have adjusted my gratitude. When I was hurting, it could have made me think, you know what, this might be bad, but I still have a home, I still have a family, I still have people that love me, and I can fix this. I can work this out. Because your perception, if you're hurting that bad, is just doom and gloom and it's the end of the world. Well, you talk to somebody that's getting a jar of peanut butter and a loaf of bread out of a blessing box, that humbles you pretty darn quick.
You call it therapy for yourself, but what has been the impact maybe that you've experienced from others who you are taking the time to see and hear?
The best full circle stories I have are people that have reached out to me directly. A couple of, and I don't, single parents, it can be a single dad too, but these have been single working mothers that can't feed their kids on a certain time of the month, waiting between paychecks. And yes, we have lots of resources for food banks in Topeka, but most of them are during the day when people are at work that work days. So these two specific instances, I'll tell you real quick. They were both single mothers, couldn't make it to the food bank times, and I know you fill those boxes. Can you tell me which one has food in it? I can't ever do that because as soon as it's there, it can be gone within 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so, but what I can do is listen and make an arrangement to be safe and have someone with me, but I can make a porch drop intentionally to that person. Then a relationship is started. I am not giving medical advice. I am sharing my experience, and I'm a good listener. I have a PhD in failure, but there's a couple things I'm good at. And so I'm a good listener, but I appreciate every part of my story because it has allowed me to really be empathetic and understand when someone's hurting. Well, the full circle piece is now both of those people are filling blessing boxes in a different spot than they were at that time, but remembering, that impact. And we have lots of stories throughout Be the Blessing Box, because there are now over 50 in
There are a lot of them. There's a place you can go and find them out. But it's a matter of you are seeing people, Rachel, and I think that's where the hope dealing part comes in. So deal us a little final piece of hope here.
Thank you.
If people are having that difficulty voicing it, because that's where we started this, you need to talk so people know and can help to fix, even if it's going to take a few tries.
Right.
Don't give up on people
Right.
is one of the things. But how do you start that?
Well,
voicing?
I would say, at least specifically from me and the ways that I can help, I don't navigate other forms of social media very well. I'm a Facebook person, I'm an old lady. So, but other people that have a negative stigma about social media, I would challenge you to follow me.
The Hope Dealer.
Because I am actively trying to lift other people up, not daily, sometimes multiple times a day. But that is because the first intervention for helping me when I'm having spasms in my jaw is to not talk. So then what are you going to do with this person when you're not supposed to talk? Mm-hmm. That has helped me build this immense community on Facebook. And so that is a good way. I think a really good way is interacting on some of the posts, because you don't just hear from me, you hear from other top city hope dealers. Other people that have been in a low spot have come with me on a shotgun ride. It's not me. It's let me help you have this experience because it helps me every day.
So. Helping others can help you, but using your voice,
yes.
Whether that be
yes.
typing it on words on social media or talking to someone, let someone know. And
never being afraid. I pulled that door at Vallejo, the 24-hour door, probably 5 times over the period of a couple of years that I really was unraveling. It's okay. It's not scary. It's okay.
It's okay if it takes you more than one try. We're here to see you. I appreciate you so much and how you see everyone in our community. Truly see them, because that's so, so important. As we've been mentioning, the 988 crisis line is there 24/7. If you have any resources that you're looking for in our own communities, WIBW.com/HearMeSeeMe has a whole list. It includes Vallejo and other organizations around our area, Pawnee Mental Health in Manhattan, Crosswinds down in Emporia, lots of things in our region, and national organizations as well if you're watching this from somewhere that's not in Northeast Kansas. WIBW.com/HearMeSeeMe. Rachel, thank you. We hear you and see you. We appreciate that so much. And everyone, we do hear you, we do see you, and we want you to be here tomorrow.